Welcome home. I'm Dr.Thema, a minister, licensed psychologist, and sacred artist, and this is Homecoming, a podcast to facilitate your journey home to yourself. While I will provide weekly inspiration and mental health tips, this podcast is not a substitute for therapy. I'm so excited you're on the journey. If you want to request specific topics or share your progress, email me at homecomingpodcast@gmail.com. Also, after you listen, be sure to like, subscribe, and share. Let's begin. Today's topic is rejection and the journey home. So we want to get to that place of recognizing the ways in which being rejected has led to us rejecting ourselves. It is a painful reality when we are not chosen. And there are many levels of rejection. Can be rejected by family, rejected by friends, rejected romantically, rejected professionally, and it is difficult to not internalize those rejections. When I internalize it, then it causes me to step away from myself, to abandon myself. So I want you to do a roll call in your mind. Even if you are journaling, you can jot them down. The major rejections of your life. Because there were times you were rejected and it didn't mean too much to you. And not in that way of when we're defensive and just say, I don't care. But I mean, there are levels of rejection. There are some things or some people that you really had your heart set on. There are some things or some people that you really thought was going to happen, was going to work out. And then the rug gets pulled out from under you, or then the door you're knocking on doesn't open. And there is an impact of that. And the reality is that the severity of my caring, the intensity of my caring translates to the severity of the impact. Not only that, many of us have had multiple rejections, and some who are listening have had countless rejections, and some who are listening never feel you have been chosen by anyone for anything. So I want us to sit with that acknowledgement and that truth, because a part of your healing journey is recognizing the impact of what you have experienced. We usually think about and have talked about trauma and that being something someone does to you. And traumatic events, physical violence, sexual violence, even verbal, are very difficult, and we have talked about that. But there is a soul wound that occurs when you are looked over, when you are rendered invisible, when you present yourself and are deemed unacceptable or uninteresting. And that impact psychologically, emotionally, can cause us to walk away from ourselves. It can cause us to have shame. It can cause us to wish we were somebody else. In order for us to come home to ourselves, there are some key things that you need to understand about rejection. The first thing I want to let you know is rejection is an event and not an identity. Rejection is something that happened to you, that has happened to us, but it is not who we are. The challenge becomes when I begin to let the rejection become the core of my identity, then all I am is someone's throwaway. All I am is someone's garbage. And so we need to shift our understanding of who we are and to recognize the measure of my value, my worth, and my identity is not dependent on anyone outside of me seeing it. And that's a hard one. That's an especially hard one if we're dealing with family rejection, because, people have these myths, or if you go to the drugstore and get a card, there are all these cards about mothers and these cards about fathers and these cards about grandparents, and it tells a story that's not everybody's story. It tells a story that's not everybody's story. I remember reading, my godmother is Dr. Renita Weems, who is a womanist theologian, and she talked about looking for a Mother's Day card for her mother, and there was no card that was written for when your mom is an alcoholic. Where is the card for the mother or the father or the grandparent who rejected you, who despised you, who didn't think too much of you, who didn't show up for you? So when I talk about us coming home to ourselves and needing to work through that, I want you to know I understand that is not light work. So that's not a matter of, I'm just going to say a sentence and you're going to listen to this podcast and it's never going to bother you again that they didn't show up for you. So that is false hope and false advertisement. The reality is that different moments will trigger it when you're in their presence again, or when you see other people with their family or other people talking about their family, when you see some television shows or films, it can be triggering, but then it is our work, our sacred work of when I feel that coming up in me, the sadness, the rejection, for some, the anger, the confusion, when I feel that coming up in me, to remind myself, I feel that, and that happened, and that is not the sum total of my identity. So me not being the chosen one in my family does not mean I am any less special, important, valuable. So I get to set the measure myself. And that's the next important thing I want you to really grapple with is, what are the ways I have aligned my beliefs with people who don't care about me? If I agree with people who reject me, then that is setting myself up for a life of sabotage and misery. And so, as a healing act, I refuse to agree with those who deemed me worthless. As a radical, revolutionary act of my healing and coming home to myself, I refuse to be in agreement, in alignment with those who do not see my value, my worth, my gifts. It is important that we take our power back to define ourselves. I have worked with people who are healing after a broken heart, and they are often wondering, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? And I want you to know on today, There doesn't have to be anything wrong with you for you to not be a match for someone else, or for someone to just be bored and want someone new, or for you not to reflect where they are in this moment or where they're trying to be. And it doesn't always mean something horrible about them. If we are honest about the times we have rejected people, rejected friends, or potential dating partners, it wasn't always that something was wrong with them. Sometimes a person can be a nice person, a good person, and it's just not a match. So I take myself off of somebody else's measuring board, off of somebody else's scales, where I am sitting around waiting for them to tell me what's wrong with me. No, we're not doing that anymore. We're not doing that anymore. So gather yourself, and we can release ourselves from needing so-called closure, of needing someone to tell us what is wrong with us. Now, not only is it a truth that someone may just not be a match, the other reality is there are times when we have done things that should not have been done. So I do want to raise this issue of accountability. Accountability. So we often think about rejection as just someone rejecting us out of the blue, and it was unwarranted, and that can happen. But the other reality is sometimes we may have done things, because as I've said before, not everyone on this podcast audience is just people who have been mistreated, right? The reality is we are both people who have been mistreated and people who have mistreated others. So instead of being stuck in someone rejecting us after we have mistreated them, then it is for me to have accountability with myself and growth. That even if it is too late for that situation, for that job, or for that promotion, or for that friend, or for that dating partner, even if I have ruined it for that, like that one is not going to work, I'm going to learn the lesson. I'm going to stretch. I'm going to grow so that when the next door opens, I can operate out of wisdom. I can operate out of wisdom. And I wonder if we can tell ourselves the truth on today about us having both experiences. Times when we gave our best, presented our best, and we were rejected. And times when we know we messed it up and then we were rejected. They are both realities for us to get to a place of awareness about. Another piece I want to tell you as it relates to rejection is not assuming everything you want is good for you. We don't want to hear it. We don't like it. Last week we talked about spiritual principles, and some of us, let me be inclusive, some of us have prayed for certain people. We have prayed for certain positions. We have prayed for things, desired it, wanted it with our whole hearts. And guess what? It wasn't good for you. It wasn't good for you. And so sometimes, even from a spiritual place, some things had to be removed because we didn't have the strength, courage, or wisdom to walk away. So some rejections were a gift. I've seen in social media the quote, you were not rejected, you were redirected. You were not rejected, you were redirected. You were not rejected, you were protected. There's some doors we knocked on. My goodness, my goodness, that were no good for us. And sometimes you get to find out later. Sometimes years later, you find out what was behind that door that you wanted so badly, whether it was a job or a relationship, and it wasn't for you. But we can get stuck in grieving missed doors, missed opportunities. We can get stuck with the idea that somebody else has our stuff or has our person, and staying in that place of resentment, staying in that place of anger and frustration, it keeps me from the unfolding. It keeps me from flowing in the process. So yes, it hurts, and I give myself permission to feel that hurt, and I give myself space for that, and I make a decision. This is the end of a chapter, not the end of a book. This is the end of a chapter. This is not the end of my book. So this is one of those, the ending is not what I expected. The ending is not what I wanted. And I choose, along with giving myself permission to grieve the loss, is to celebrate myself, to nourish myself, and to regain my strength so I can build a life, so I can cultivate a life, because I refuse to live my life looking behind me. I refuse to spend my life looking behind me. So there are some disappointments and rejections that in order to come home to yourself, we need to accept and release. Acceptance means I stop trying to figure out why. Can I tell you, the people who you want to tell you why, oftentimes they don't know why, or even if they told you, it's not going to really be a satisfying answer. It's not really going to tell you anything. And so I encourage you to shift, SHIFT, change your question from why to what now. From why to what now. That I am not going to spend years chasing the why it happened or why it didn't work. It is, this door is closed. This door is closed, so you can stop stalking their social media. You can stop doing that door is closed. You can stop talking about them, making them the center of every conversation. The door is closed, and you give yourself permission to recenter yourself, because some of us have made the ones who rejected us the center of our story. So you are living your story waiting for someone who has already released you. And so you take your power back. You take your life back. You take yourself back. Reclaim yourself. Reclaim yourself from the lost and found. I make a decision to treasure me. Now, I do want to say this as we think about both releasing and growing and learning, is I encourage you to think about the people or position that rejected me. Did they actually meet me? Sometimes we send our representative, or we were something else, or we were trying to be what we thought they wanted us to be. And so the rejection was not even of you, because you're so guarded. Let me say you, we can be so guarded. We can have so much armor up that people didn't even really get to know you. So that can be a lesson in and of itself, is I'm going to be authentic. I'm going to be me, because that way, if the friendship or relationship or the job doesn't work out, at least I was me, right? That I did not surrender myself, my ethics, my integrity, my identity, my values. I showed up as me. And if people don't like me, or if I am not a match for a position, it's better to know it. It's better to know it. And that's all right. It may not feel all right, but it's going to be all right. It's going to be all right. So what is for me will be for me, and it will not require me to be something I am not. I am looking to cultivate spaces. I am looking to nourish spaces where I can flourish, where I can shine, where I can be me. And can I tell you, like our chicken and eagle stories, there are some other people that are like you. And you might be, unique. You might be out of the box. You might be artsy. You might be a nerd. You might be whatever. You might be churchy, whatever. Whatever your thing is. There's some other people that are like that. But you're not going to be everybody's cup of tea. And that's all right. That's all right. So you find your tribe instead of chasing down, tracking down, trying to get people to tolerate you. And I, for one, I'm not trying to spend a lot of time in spaces where I'm tolerated. I'm looking for the places where I will be celebrated, where I will be appreciated, and not from that place of, because I don't appreciate me. It is because I appreciate me. It is because I value me that I am looking to spend most of my time in spaces where I get that people see me, that they get me, and they appreciate what they see. Yes? So for us to get home to ourselves, it is to heal the wounds of rejection from people, from positions, from schools, from jobs, and most importantly, the ways that we have rejected ourselves. And for those who come from a spiritual vantage point, I want you to know that God knows everything about you, even the secrets that your best friend doesn't know. God knows and says, I still choose you. I still love you. I still celebrate you. I still see you. And I wonder if we can see ourselves through those same divine, sacred eyes. Oh, Thema. Say it to yourself, whatever your name is. I see you. I know all this stuff. I know everything about you, and I still celebrate you. I still love you. I still value you. I see you. Give yourself that gift on today. And so this week for your homework, I want to encourage you to journal about what you have learned from the rejections. What did it teach you about yourself? What did it teach you about relationships? What did it teach you about acceptance? So this week, I invite you to journal about your life lessons from rejection as you begin the journey, continue the journey home. After everybody else turned their backs, after we turned our backs on ourselves, I invite your soul to tell your mind, heart, body, and spirit, welcome home.
beautiful.